Hey, Dr. Trevor Wilkins. I want to talk to you today about assuming what you already know when you don't actually have evidence for it. And we all do this. So I'm willing to always tell a story on myself to kind of make my point. I have to go back to my policing days. It's been a little while. It's been over a decade now, but most of you know that's where I spent 15 years in uniform as law enforcement, other 5 in EMS before that. So I go back to just a random stop, right? Commercial vehicle stop. We were doing a detail, and the guy was speeding. Not a big deal. Truck driver was speeding. I know that's hard if they get a ticket, but again, big scheme of things, not a big deal. He messed up, so we have to deal with it. And very rapidly, long story short, this speeding ticket went from speeding ticket to fight to an assault to him going to jail. It just deteriorated so fast. Probably some anger on both ends led to that. But it is what it is. He assaulted me, he had to go to jail. So I had to tow his truck, and if you're a business owner, you know, getting your assets taken like that, it's going to be expensive. When you do things like commercial vehicles, it's going to cost not just time and money, but let's say it's a product, that they're supposed to be delivered, and maybe the place they're delivering it to won't accept the product anymore. I know there's a lot more pieces to it when you deal with a commercial vehicle. We try to take that seriously. Well, so I finished the arrest. We have to tow the truck. It's not a local company, so we can't call anybody. And I come out to 8 the next morning and put myself in service, and immediately dispatch says, hey, this company owner wants you to call. Here's the number. And I go down a pretty good spiral because I've taken these calls before. And a lot of times what these calls honestly turned out to be is the business owner really pissed at me, telling me that I've ruined his job, I've ruined his career, that I've ruined their product. And I could have found alternatives, absolutely no accountability for the truck driver whatsoever, right? And don't get me wrong, in this story, I've worked with a billion good truck drivers on the side of the road and in that business. I'm just talking about a couple that went bad. But these business calls were always, them bawling me out. You've cost me money, goes on and on. So, of course, I get this information. We want you to call this company owner. He wants to talk about that arrest yesterday. And so I go down this spiral of what I'm assuming. Oh, he's going to be rude. He's going to blame me. He's not going to take any accountability for him and his driver. So I probably started the call that way. Probably with, this Officer Wilkins, what do you need? Right? And I'm sure it was much more stern than that. And this driver said, listen, man, that driver you arrested yesterday, and again, I'm already coming up with what these conversations are going to be. And he said, man, that guy's my brother-in-law. I've been trying to fire that guy for 3 years, and you gave me a reason to. I just called to say thanks. That's it. I don't know, kind of a funny story, but all of a sudden now I'm almost apologetic that to tell this guy's stuff, that it's going to cost him money. Not really apologetic for the arrest we had to make, but definitely apologetic for feeling like, man, I wish I could have helped on the back end of this. I wish I'd have known that. The point of this story, it's a funny story. The point of this is I spent all that time before the phone call just absolutely knowing exactly what this phone call was going to be about and knowing what my response had to be, and I'm not going to take any BS. That's completely wrong. So how did I go into that call? I went into that call because of my belief system already worked up, whether it be angry or anxious turned to anger, or at least acting in an angry manner while trying to maintain some professionalism. But it's a perfect example when I look back on those things of exactly what I talk about on here all the time, is that it's never the event. The event doesn't cause the emotion. The event impacts us. We're not trying to take away some really traumatic and hard things. But it's the event filtered through our belief system, what you're telling yourself this all means, that becomes the emotion. And I know for some people, when you hear that, you've heard maybe a cognitive therapist, a cognitive behavior therapist say stuff like that, and what can you prove and what can you not. I think it's much deeper than that. Those aren't necessarily really bad ways to examine things, but let me give you an example. If let's say that you work at night at some place where you have to make bank deposit late at night. I know that's old school, everything's electronic now, but just stick with me. And so at night you have to walk out to your car, you've done this for 10 years, and one night you get robbed. a guy comes up at gunpoint and robs you. It's terrifying. I don't care how tough you think you are. That's a scary thing to go through. So maybe this person is petrified. They're worried about going back to work. They're anxious about being robbed again. So they come in and they see a cognitive behavior therapist. And if CBT, if they're staying true to that form, they're going to ask him things like, what evidence do you have this could happen again? And you say, well, I still work at night. I still have the bank deposit. Now he knows our schedule. He knows we carry money. It could happen again. And a therapist may ask, what evidence do you have that it's not going to happen again? Well, it's only happened once in 10 years and it was really scary, but I'm getting some firearms training. They're going to hire security for us to walk us out to our car. I can park closer to the building now. We've changed the time that we leave, so maybe people don't track that. All right, that makes sense. What would you tell somebody that's going through this? Maybe you had a friend in the same position. Well, I'd tell them that, be vigilant, keep your eye out, but it'll happen once in 10 years and it's not likely to happen again. So you'll probably be okay. And that's an okay way to cognitively do business. And maybe you came in at a 10 out of 10, I'm going to get robbed and I can't handle this, and the anxiety is so high. And maybe after those questions you left at a 5 out of 10. Here's the problem. If you get robbed tomorrow, everything I just said is bullshit. You're not going to believe a word I say after that. It's because we're targeting the wrong thing. It's not the event that causes the emotion. The event is going to impact us. There's nothing that we're going to take away from the fact of how petrifying that robbery was. But what are you telling yourself about the robbery? What are you telling yourself about the phone call to the company owner? I was telling myself exactly what I knew was going to happen, exactly what I knew what this call was going to be about. And you know what? I didn't have the evidence for that. I had some evidence of what it likely could be. I have some evidence of what it's been in the past and what this one could be. When you go back to work after that robbery, you've got some evidence that it could happen again. You've got some evidence that it might not happen again. But we go down this anxiety track because on the robbery side, it's going to happen again, and I can't possibly handle it. It could happen again. I'm not gonna argue that fact with you. I think it's the huge mistake that a lot of cognitive therapists make. Just treating the fact that it may or may not happen again. The problem is that we make up this scenario that I can't possibly handle it, and it absolutely must not happen. And if it does happen, I can't possibly handle it. The problem with that belief is none of it's provable. You can't take that to court and prove it. It must not, shall not, cannot happen again. I got more evidence that it could happen again. I don't want it to happen again. I'm not going to like if it happens again. I'm not banking on it to happen or not happen again. That's a fact. It could happen again. But it's the second part of that sentence that's always going to get you in trouble. And I can't possibly handle it. So now you're anxious all the time about something that might not actually happen. Now, I'm not saying you need to go from anxious to don't care. If you figure out how to do that, you let me know. We'll write a book together and be rich. I just want to get you from this very unhealthy anxiety, which is crippling you when you came into the office, to a negative but healthy nervous. Because you'll make better decisions based on being nervous. I can't go back to work, but I am taking these steps to change that. And if it does happen again, because it could happen again, here's the steps I'm going to take, and we'll likely be okay. I have more evidence of that. It's the belief that's the problem, not the event itself. I did the same thing with the phone call to the company owner. I knew exactly what it was going to be. It shall not be this way. I know it's going to be this way. It shall not be this way, and I'm not going to handle it because this guy already is a jerk. Or worse, but this is YouTube. It's my belief system that gets us in trouble. You're going to have to challenge, or at least be willing to debate, that belief system. What I should have done with this phone call is, well, I do have the evidence that these tend to go pretty south pretty quickly. I do have evidence of what this call could be. Let me call and find out, and then I'll handle it then. On the robbery, I do have evidence that it could happen again. Your absolutistic godlike demand that it must not happen again is not serving you. There's the anxiety. It could happen again. I'm not trying to say it would be okay if it happened again. Probably be petrifying. Hopefully, I end up okay. But now you're spending the next 10 years with this crippling anxiety. And how's that serving you? You sleeping at night? No. Can you concentrate at work at all? No. If you're constantly anxious a bit like this, how's it helping your relationships? Your work relationship, your relationship with your coworkers and your supervisors and your boss, your relationship at home. You know, pretend that it's not actually crippling you to the point where you're not thinking about it all the time. This will pass, but it's not going to pass with anxiety. It's going to pass with nervous. The belief is the problem. What can you prove? You've heard me say on previous videos, if you watched them, I challenge you to do the citation challenge. This comes from my area of academia in getting the doctorates, in that I'm not going to make a statement in a research paper that I can't cite my reference for, because I just don't have evidence that it's true. And the whole point of research is to find evidence that either inductively or deductively shows evidence of your hypothesis. My hypothesis was that this call was going to go badly. Your hypothesis is that you're going to get robbed again and you can't possibly handle it. So, use the citation challenge. What can you prove? Can you prove to me in court before the call was made that it was definitely going to go bad? No, I thought I could. Can you prove to me in a court of law evidence that you're definitely going to get robbed again, and you must absolutely not get robbed again? It shall not, cannot happen, and I can't possibly handle it. You can't. You can't. I don't think that we err on the side of positive. I think we err on the side of what you can possibly prove. Because so many of you, and the vast majority of people that reach out for help from me, have a narrative that they can't prove. An event has happened. They have a narrative about themselves or other people in the world. I must do well. You must treat me well. And the world must give me what I deserve and be easy. And that's their mentality. And you're going from healthy negative emotions like sad and disappointed and nervous to unhealthy anger, anxiety, and depression and guilt. If you need help with this, there's links down in the bigger part of this chat. I do a mastermind with TJ Morris at Bear Independent 3 times monthly. You can find that under his channel, Bear Independent, on Patreon. Or reach out to me. There's ways to do so. Again, you can find it down in the notes of this call.